All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the October 11th meeting of the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency. We'll go ahead and do introductions for the record. I'm Jim Cooper from the City of Olympia. Greg.
Greg Brotherton, Vice Chair, Jefferson County.
Mike.
Mike French, Clallam County.
Joan.
Joan, excuse me, Joan Cathy, City of Tumwater.
Robin. Robin, you might be muted. Go ahead now.
Yeah, I'm good. Robin Vasquez, City of Lacey.
Okay, Randy.
Randy Neville in Mason County.
I think that's all of the board. Jeff, will you do the staff?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jeff Johnston, Executive Director of ORCAA, joined this morning by Robert Moody, Compliance Manager, Mark Gooden, Engineering Manager, Odell Hadley, Senior Air Monitoring Specialist, Lynn Harding, Financial Services Manager, Debbie Moody, Office Manager and Public Records Officer. Chris Kraus, our IT Systems Administrator, is running Zoom for us today because Dan Nelson is on leave. We've also got Tiffany Flores, Records Clerk, and Mike Schultz, Compliance Supervisor, listening in.
Great. Welcome, everyone. With that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda for the day.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any amendment or discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have an agenda, so now we'll go to Chair's report. I'll start with Greg with the Finance Committee report.
Thanks so much, Jim. So we did have a finance meeting today, and our next one will be in January, I believe. So it's our last one for the year. And, all's well, really. Lynn's, you have the same information in the general packet. But basically, at the end of the first quarter of fiscal year 24, where our revenues are at, a quarter of the way through, our revenues are at 40%, our expenses are at 27%. Large part of the expenses, 71%, are from the salaries. Well, we'll expect some budget adjustments as we go into the next year. I think we're going to talk about later. And then it was asked that Lynn talk when she gives her report later about what impacts, if any, would ORCAA suffer if there was a federal government shutdown. So Lynn will address that when she gives her report later. And that ends the Finance Committee report. Unless there's questions
for Greg? Okay, hearing none, go to my report. So I'm going to ask, Jeff's going to just pull up the schedule for the next few months as we're looking at it. So I want to have him go over that so everyone understands what's coming. And then I have a couple of quick discussion questions for you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. And so I just wanted to chat a little bit about the topics for upcoming board meetings. Chris is showing the agenda planner as that was attached to your agenda that Debbie sent out. So this is kind of our thinking of how the next few months will plan out. So our proposal is to skip the November meeting. And then in December, I've got a couple relatively minor and hopefully quick updates that I'd like to bring regarding updates to the ORCAA's Policies and Procedures Manual, which is a board-approved document, and so we'd like to bring those to you. And then also just a quick update on the work that Debbie and Tiffany Flores have been doing on our records in December. But then more importantly, if you could roll over to January, as we talked about a little bit last month, we'll be bringing to the full board budget amendments to accommodate the fact that we're doing some additional hiring, some transitions associated with upcoming retirements, and there's a budget amendment associated with that. And so we would like to do that in January. That would open up a 30-day public comment period, which would then close at the February meeting, and then we would have that budget amendment in place by the end of February, which is when Lynn estimates we'll need the budget authority. So that's our plan, but would like to just make sure that we're going to have that works for folks. So with that, can I turn it back over to you, Jim?
Yeah, great. Any questions about the board work plan? So then the two questions for the board. The first one is, are you all okay with skipping November and meeting in December? Part of what's driving that is Robin and I are also already out in November. And so wanted to check in and see if that made sense, or if people had, more people had plans in December that would warrant flipping those. Everybody okay with November? I saw no objection, so if I hear one, I'll keep going. So the other question is, either now or let Jeff Johnston or myself know about whether you anticipate any board transitions in January. So looking, I think, mostly at the cities. I think all of the counties are, as far as I know, not having elections, except for Thurston County, which is adding new board members. So that could be a possible shift, without talking to Carolina, just knowing that going from 3 to 5 is going to, spread out their workload quite a bit starting in January. But wanted to see if anybody anticipated anything else, because it's pretty critical that we do that discussion either on the budget amendment, either with the board that we have, or making sure that Jeff gets the right amount of time scheduled with new members so that they can get caught up prior to what's a pretty significant amendment for us. It's not super typical, so but also quite exciting. So not hearing anything there.
Well,
so
I'm planning to win my election, so.
And you have the biggest contest in town, right, Joan?
Oh man, it's just so huge. I'm still looking for my opponent, but anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joan can't find her opponent, for the folks that are here. She's unopposed from the other counties.
But I think I'm the only person on the board that's up for election, and I have not put in a request to remove myself from this committee.
Right on. And Robin and I hopefully are stable as well. Good. Okay. So we will not meet in November, and we anticipate the board being the same members for the most part going into January. And I realize now that Jill is here. So hello, Jill.
I was sitting in the waiting room for quite a while. I'm not sure what happened there, but sorry, I wasn't really that late. I was
You
like,
were actually on time. Okay. And then we and then I neglected to introduce our council. So Mike and Jeff, hello and good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Actually, before I move, I have, it looks like, one more board member logging in here. Go ahead and pause while Dave gets connected to audio. Well, I'm going to kind of keep moving since that's taking a minute. So we have public comment is next on the agenda. I don't see public in the room. Chris or Jeff, are there any public comments that we should know about in between meetings?
Nope, none.
Okay, great. And now I see Dave is connected. So welcome, Dave. Okay, so that takes us to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve these two items.
So moved.
second.
A motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or polls? All in
Jim,
favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And that takes us to resolution 283, action to appoint our executive director as a hearing officer. Jeff, can you walk us through that?
Sure. And Chris, if you could bring up that document for us. So this is a follow-up on some discussion we had at last month's meeting. Probably remember that Mark mentioned that he and his team are working on a couple high-profile notice of construction permits where we will need to schedule public hearings in the coming months. And so Mark can provide more information about where those permits stand during his update. But we had some conversation about the executive director's authority to act as hearing officer. And so we drafted this resolution. By approving this resolution, the board takes formal action to appoint me as hearing officer at the public hearings related to air permitting, both notice of construction permits and air operating permits that will take place in the coming months. Again, this is consistent with ORCAA Rule 1.7 and ORCAA Rule 6.1.3, but again, it goes into detail in the whereases, so I can answer any questions if there are any.
Mike.
Is there an appeal process?
An appeal process to the permits themselves?
So if you have a public hearing and you serve as the hearing officer and make a determination, then is there an appeal process to that, or is it just to the permit?
That's a
Jeff,
good
if
question.
you'd like, I could answer that.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Sure. Yeah. Or Mark.
Yes, there is an appeal process, and we, in our noticing, any entity who entered into the public hearing or submitted comments receives a notice of the final determination by the hearings examiner and a pointer to how they can appeal through the PCHB. So the answer is yes.
So the Pollution Control Hearings Board is the appeal for both construction and air permit, correct? Okay.
There's actually two appeal avenues for air operating permits. It's a real messy system, but an interested person who submitted comments on an air operating permit can petition the EPA to not approve of the permit. In addition, that person can appeal the air operating permit to the Pollution Control Hearings Board as well. So there's two avenues for air operating permits. There's one for the notices of construction.
Good for you, Mike? All right, great. Good question. Any other questions on this? And so I was just going to say this does it in really as long as Jeff is our executive director, unless we take some other action. And so I think one of the things that I want to do is just in the next update of Jeff's contract, which I think is a year out, is let's update it and also spell out that the board has authorized him and delegated him as the hearings officer. So that's clear in both places. Okay, so then it looks like we are ready if anyone has a motion. Looking for a motion to approve resolution number 283 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Seems like we should have a hearing for this, but I guess I'm willing to let it go.
Careful. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, let me just get, Robin was an aye for affirmative. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Jeff, go forth and do good.
Okay, thank you. And we will certainly keep you posted on how the permits are moving forward and when the hearings are scheduled for, and certainly invite folks to attend. The likely upcoming hearings will be in Grays Harbor County, so Jill will be particularly in touch with you about them, and love to have you at the hearing if that makes sense.
And I should say on this, it's not a go forth and do good. It's a go forth and interpret the rules properly. And yeah, and I think everyone would be interested in knowing about the public hearings because it's not super common for us to have them. So,
yep,
great. Okay, so we'll move on then to the compliance manager update from Robert.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome. I have some really good stories for you today. While I'm going through those, if you wish to browse through the compliance information that's included in your packet, and we'll come back around to that in a minute. But so I have 3 items for you. We have advertised for the air quality specialist position that we've created. And as of this morning, I've received 6 applications in the first week, which is a very positive sign. That's, I think, more than we got last time total. So we will be reviewing those applications on October 30th. If the process goes well, we could conceivably have a new staff member by December 1st. May or may not happen that way, but that's what we're hoping for. Item number 2, Chris, can I get you to bring up the pictures, please? So what he's pulling up here is a series of pictures that represent a win. And in our business, we have to celebrate these because they don't happen very often. So these pictures were put together by Maria Machado of Thurston County Environmental Health. Rob Weiland of ORCAA and Maria tag teamed this location. We were involved because of the burning of garbage, and the county was dealing with the solid waste issues. The property owner was able to establish control of the property, and based on receipts, hauled 10,420 pounds of solid waste to the landfill. So, and then to have accomplished this in 3 months is pretty phenomenal. You know, and so the moral of the story, I guess, is for ORCAA, cooperation with other entities is a big boost in being able to close these kinds of cases. So it's, in this one, it was pretty phenomenal. You can see how much garbage is in those pictures as Chris goes through them here. And it was quite the process, and a phenomenal improvement. You know, makes the neighbors happy too. So greatly appreciate that. I think there's one more after that, Chris. A couple more, I guess. So okay.
That was an incinerator toilet.
Yeah, I was wondering. Yeah, I was trying to put that together.
There's a variety of things that were there that you kind of wonder about. But yeah, they hauled off several junk cars and cleaned that up too. We don't deal with the junk cars, fortunately, except for when they burn them. But so that is, again, a big win. Item number 3 on my list is really special, really unique. Full your attention on this one. I don't have a drum in the background, so you have to just put up with me. Been here for over 30 years, and as far as I know, this is the first. We received a call this week from a citizen in our jurisdiction. They have been interacting with ORCAA periodically, I might add, since 1999. And typically those calls were related to smoke concerns, nuisance complaints. And they are so pleased with ORCAA's responsiveness to their issues. And because of that, they're actually considering including ORCAA in their estate planning. And so there is a potential for a financial donation to the agency. And we would need to talk to Mr. Myers. You know, this is very new and fresh, so first time he's hearing of it, but we need to have that conversation and see what we can do to make this come to fruition. So very excited about that. Big feather in our cap, and very appreciative that somebody cares that much about us. So now coming back around to the compliance packet, was there anything in there that sparked any questions for me? See, Robin has a hand up. You know, everything just disappeared. Okay.
No, that was applause.
Oh,
It's really
okay.
exciting
Sorry.
to hear that you got, yeah, that was just me saying, great job, ORCAA.
Mike?
Yeah, so I noticed the platypus marine notice of violation. I don't recall us talking about that in previous months, or maybe I missed it. So I just want to know what if that was resolved or on its way to resolution.
That one is on its way to resolution. They had some materials that they were using in their painting application that were not allowed by their permit. At the time of the inspection, they pulled them off the shelf that day and took them out of inventory. So they're making strides to be in compliance. I believe there's still an outstanding issue that they are submitting a notice of construction for as well. So they are definitely working diligently to be back in compliance.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Robert? Okay, well, congratulations. That's an excellent accolade from a resident. And I imagine we'll look forward to a discussion about what gift acceptance policy for the Clean Air Agency looks like.
Yes. So.
Yeah, I just want to also chime in. Yeah, when this voicemail came in after we closed on Monday, and then Jackie shared it with a few of us. But yeah, and haven't had a chance. I did leave the caller voicemail yesterday, but I'm interested in, of course, talking with her more. So we'll be reaching out to her and connecting with her and finding out more. But it is very gratifying. Was we hear a lot of complaints about ORCAA's efforts, and so when we get these, and it's nice that Robert's able to showcase a couple wins, a couple good stories today. So that's great.
My mind went grandiose, and we had a new foundation for clean air education and prevention. Anyway,
well, it's
okay.
it's not it is a relative. I mean, she said between $5,000 and $7,000, so it's not like we're talking a huge amount, but just the fact that she's willing to reach out to us and say this is something that she's thinking about. So just to let you know, kind of the size that we're talking about.
Thank you for that.
It's not an endowment kind of thing.
Pull me back to the ground. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, still amazing. It's great. Okay, let's go to Mark with the engineering update.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I'll direct you to tab B5, and if Chris could pull that one up. And just for newer members of the board, this is a list of industrial and commercial air permit applications that are being processed by the agency. And it includes applications for new greenfield facilities, as well as modifications to existing facilities. And it includes air operating permits for our large major sources of air pollution throughout our region. We have 11 of those. And we've got a lot of details on all these cases. So if you see one that is in your area and you want the details, we can provide you with the details, but I'm just going to highlight a few of them. I'd also like to point out that at the very end of this document, Chris, if you could scroll to the end of the document, there's a good explanation of what the acronyms stand for in this table. And thank you to Debbie for putting this together. We sometimes rattle off these acronyms, and so here's your glossary that you could look them up. So this list contains notices of construction, air operating permits, and all the rest of these that are listed there. Chris, if you could scroll up to the top, please. And I'm just going to highlight a few of them. So thank you for passing the resolution today that enables our Executive Director, Jeff, to serve as a hearings examiner in case of public hearings. public hearings are triggered in several ways, and those ways are listed in Rule 6.1 of ORCAA's regulations. And so the public hearings may be triggered if we get significant public interest on any notice of construction or air operating permit application. A public hearing may be triggered if there's a request, and if we see that, yeah, there's a likelihood that there will be public interest. Okay, so it's at the discretion of our executive director, but in some cases where we anticipate a public hearing, we will recommend to the project proponent that they go ahead and automatically bank on a public hearing, and that saves them time in the long run because public hearings need to be noticed for at least 30 days. So there's no sense going through a 30-day public notice and comment period just to find out that you got significant public interest and to schedule another 30-day notice on the hearing. And you piggyback the two noticing periods and you save time. So we have a few cases on our list right now that we do anticipate significant public interest, and we have recommended to the project proponent to request a public hearing. And one of them, and the next page, please, Chris. One page down, Pacific, right at the bottom, one page up, you went a little bit too far. Keep on scrolling until you find Pacific Northwest. Right there, okay. Right there, okay. And I apologize, I'm gonna update this description here. This is Pacific Northwest Renewable Energy, and it is a proposal for a new pellet manufacturing plant near Hoquiam. And it will be a major facility, meaning it will be subject to the Title V Air Operating Permit Program, which requires a 5-year renewable air operating permit for the very biggest sources in our region. So this facility is projected to emit over 100 tons of several criteria air pollutants. And for that reason, we have recommended that they request a public hearing. Also, the pellet manufacturing plant is going to rely on biomass combustion for their heat source. And nationwide, there's been opposition to biomass burning facilities, and they know it. And when they came in the door, they let us know that they expected significant public concern over this project. So we recommended, hey, just send us a letter recommending that we just proceed with a public hearing. So this one will go to a public hearing. The question is when. Well, when will be dependent upon when ORCAA can make a preliminary determination on the application on whether or not to approve. And we're still in that process right now. We're working out issues. There's been a few changes to the project description that have come about because of the process, the air review process. And so we're still not at a point to where we can issue the public notice for the hearing, but the applicant has requested that we expedite this permit application. And so we're going to try our best to get a public notice out very soon and to hold a public hearing sometime end of November, December timeframe. So just a heads up on that. There's, as a segue to Robert's report, Platypus Marine shows up there at the very bottom. They did submit a notice of construction, and that notice of construction does address the notice of violation that was issued, and then some. They have plans to expand their existing operations, and those operations will include using materials that emit air toxics. And so this application will require our review and evaluating whether or not the proposal complies with Washington's air toxics regulation, which is a specific regulation under Chapter 173.460. That's the Washington air toxics regulation, and that's all of our applications we review with respect to that air toxics regulation. This one is going to be particularly not difficult, but we'll have to focus a lot of attention because this proposal by Platypus will result in more air toxic emissions in that area. So I think I'm going to leave my report to just highlighting those two, Pacific Northwest Renewable Energy and Platypus Marine. There's a lot of goings on at the Port of Grays Harbor that we do anticipate more large projects to end up on this list, but we're not quite at that point yet to where those companies have submitted applications. So I'll leave it at that. And as always, if you have questions, please ask.
Questions for Mark? Port of Grays Harbor is the place to be. Okay. That takes us to Odell with air monitoring update.
Hi, everyone. I will share my screen. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this will be a short report. I will confess that I was in Portland last week for a conference, and so I put this together on my laptop without a lot of time and resources. So if you have questions, of course you can ask, and maybe the next meeting will have something a little bit more in depth, but it will we will cover the basics. So September 2023 air quality summary, you'll see we had a couple of moderate days in Port Angeles and in Raymond. I'm not actually just the one moderate day in Port Angeles, but we did see a few days where some of the personal air sensors, especially in the Elwha Valley, were red and orange, and that was due to the wildfires that were burning up in the Olympic Mountains. I'm not sure if you all were aware of that, but we did have an unusual West Coast Olympic Mountain wildfire season this summer, where I think it was the largest fire in decades. I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's been a really long time. And luckily for us, the smoke was pretty much confined to the national park and to the Olympic Mountains, and we didn't see it impact our residential neighborhoods that often, although we did see several days where the smoke drained down the Elwha Valley and really impacted people in that valley specifically. So hyper-local events there. Otherwise, good air quality at all of our sites. You'll notice Chesapeake had 20 days of good, and the other 10 days the site was down for the upgrade project, so no power to the site during that time. Our ozone, September is the last month where we officially collect ozone data, which is a summer pollutant, and here I'm showing you the Lacey ozone monitor official in blue, and then the red Chesapeake, we came back online here, I believe right around September 9th. One of the interesting things I just want to point out here is that in the Lacey data, you see a very clear diurnal cycle, daily cycle. So it's a minimum at night and maximum during the day. When we get cloud cover, those extremes are much less, but you don't see that as much at Chesapeake. Sometimes you'll see that daily maximum coinciding, but other days it's completely offset. And this is due mainly to transported ozone. So it is generated in urban areas and then at night gets transported to the Chica Peak site. Other times we do see it building up at Chica Peak. So ozone chemistry is unusual compared to PM 2.5 and some other data. And one thing I just want to mention about ozone that I learned last week that was really interesting is I attended it was called Anti-Racist Air Monitoring Talk, and it showed how communities of color and socioeconomic status really played a very large role in how much pollution you were exposed to, specifically with PM 2.5 and other toxics. The one pollutant where that was not true was ozone. So because ozone is a transported pollutant, it turns out that affluent communities are more impacted by ozone. So that was really interesting, and encourage you to look that up. I was surprised by that, but interesting tidbit. So other monitoring news, we finalized the upgrades at Chica Peak. I may have jumped the gun on this. We actually are still working on fixing some leaks and getting analyzer maintenance done. Tomorrow I'll be going up with Rob Weiland. We'll be installing some stairs that lead up to our door. Pretty excited about that, because it's really difficult climbing in and out of there right now with equipment. And I will be fixing a roof leak on one of the inlets we installed last month. Hard to test that during the summer when it was hot and dry, but now that we're getting some really good rains coming through, we're getting a good workout on that system. Rob did Port Angeles and Aberdeen quarterly QCs in September, and as I mentioned, I attended the AAAR American Association for Aerosol Research Conference in Portland. It's a conference I attend about once every 3 years when it's in Portland, because it's easy for me to get to, and it's a way for me to kind of keep tabs on the research being done in pollution monitoring and what they're determining about health impacts, etc. So that is all I have for today. I'm happy to entertain any questions if you have them.
Questions for Odell? No
Great.
lack of work in her department. Good job. Okay. So we're going to go now to communications with Jeff as the stand-in.
Yes, correct. As I mentioned earlier, so Dan is, well, I think I mentioned it. So Dan is missing his first board meeting, and he thought 5 or 6 years. But he's steelhead fishing on the Deschutes in Oregon for the rest of the week. So he gave me some talking points, and also, Chris, I guess if you could bring up, there were a couple brochures that were attached to the agenda. So related to the first thing I'll mention is that we've got the wood stove. We're working with Ecology to finalize the wood smoke reduction grant. It's a 2-year grant funded at $288,000 for the biennium, and we had budgeted roughly $140,000 per year, so we did a little bit better than expected. So that's good. It has a recycle award component, which is $500 for any pre-2020 stove, and that's throughout ORCAA's 6-county jurisdiction. That's the recycle award. Then there is a replacement award, which is expanded to cover all of Thurston and Mason counties, as well as eastern portions of Jefferson and Clallam counties. And so in those counties, in terms of writing the grant proposal, we need to show that the areas that are closer to the PM 2.5 standards. So that's why that grant is, or why those the replacement award isn't available throughout our counties. But what that award does is it provides up to $2,000 for replacing an pre-2020 wood stove with a heat pump, either ducted or ductless, or $1,000 for converting to either natural gas, propane, or electric fireplaces, or a pellet stove. And so Dan's working on doing a lot of outreach. These flyers or things he's put together, and there's going to be a social media push. I think he's working with other local agencies, probably Puget Sound and maybe others, maybe do an ad buy. But anyways, we'll be pushing out a lot more information about this. So any questions?
Can I ask a question about that, Jeff?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
I saw on the first page that you're cycling through, it talked about cities and UGAs. Do you have to be in a city or a UGA to qualify for this program?
No, you do not.
Okay,
so yeah, no, that's
Fort Townsend's our only
yeah.
UGA in Jefferson County, so it kind
Yeah,
of
so
contradicts
that's a good question. Let me chat with Dan when he's back next week. But my understanding is that, again, it's good, and that might be a remnant, might just be something that didn't get updated from the past. But again, it has been expanded. So my understanding is that, again, that it is not simply in the cities or UGA. So that's a good point. I will.
Maybe I missed it, but how come Grace Harbor is not included?
Well, Grace Harbor is included in the recycle award, but because the measured PM 2.5 values are quite a bit below the standard, we're not Ecology didn't approve funding the replacement award in Grace Harbor or Pacific counties.
As we have cleaner air to start with.
Exactly.
Which is a good thing.
Yes, yep. It is a good thing. So,
till all these sources come online, Jill.
What's that?
Till all these new sources come online.
Yeah.
So, any other questions about that?
So I had that similar question, Jeff, about the counties that just get the recycling award. So that's not really clear. And then, is there a place or an easy way to describe what it means to not be compliant with that 2020 wood stove standard? Is there a certain year of manufacturing or like a simple way for people to understand that versus the regulation?
Yep. And yeah, in terms of knowing again what the age of their wood stove is, or yeah,
if the age makes a difference for the compliance in that standard, I mean, something simple there or a place to go look it up would make sense to me. So maybe that's just at the main link.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll pass that on to Dan, and we'll make sure to do what we can to clarify who is eligible.
It's great to see it expanding, though. Very cool. Okay, so board members look for that and help share it out once it goes public, so we can get the word out.
Yep. And then, some other things Dan wanted me to update you on. As of actually just a couple of days ago, all counties in ORCAA's jurisdiction are now open for our burning programs, including residential yard waste and land clearing burning where it's permitted. And again, in Thurston County, and part of Grace Harbor County, where we have the residential burn permit programs, those programs opened up again at the and as of a few days ago, we had 1,200 permit applications received in the first week. So, which is kind of on par with past years. So, and then a couple outreach things that Dan wanted me to mention. So he had there's a bank here, First Security Bank, right up the street from us at Harrison and Limited Lane, has offered some display space for ORCAA. And so Dan has set up some information up there displaying wood smoke reduction grant program information and asbestos and demolition notification requirements. So that's a good place to do some outreach. It'll be interesting to hear a little bit more about that and how that worked out, and what sort of connections we've made through that outreach. Dan also had listed he's been doing some school outreach with Olympic Educational Service District 114 schools in Clallam, Jefferson, Kitsap, and Mason counties. So I think that's probably through the Northwest Air Quality Communicators group that he's working with. I don't know more details about that, but have questions, please let Dan know or let me know, and we can work to get those answered. And then Dan's also been participating in a variety of environmental justice training classes and having conversations just in relation to and preparation for the upcoming public hearings that ORCAA is going to be doing in the coming months. So those are the points that Dan asked me to make. Any questions about any of that?
Communications questions? Don't see any, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so that takes us to finance and operations. Lynn.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see y'all. So, one thing on the wood smoke reduction program, the $500 recycle is going to be available in all 6 counties. So that might be an older, I'm not sure, but I just wanted to pipe in and just at least say that. Pacific and Grace was part of that. Okay, well, I have 3 things for y'all this morning. Hope you all doing wonderful. It looks like the sunshine popped out, so that's nice. So the 3 things I have is we did receive official word from Association of Washington Cities, our benefit trust, that the premiums for 2024 are going to be modest. So that's great. It's also in sync with our 2024 budget. So with our 2% premium reduction by qualifying for the eWell City Award, the Regents is going up modestly, a little over 2%. And then Kaiser is going up about 3.6%. So that's all good news, and it's also included with our budget. The second item is Jeff and I are working to finalize the new financial specialist position. We're planning on advertising it very soon, hopefully next month, at least by next month, with an anticipated hire of January 1, 2024. Fingers crossed. Yes. And then the last item, I was asked by the Finance Committee to provide what would the impacts be to, excuse me, ORCAA in the event there was a federal government shutdown. And I mean, we're all faced with that, right? And so specifically, ORCAA receives the majority of our funds from fees that we collect. And currently with the first quarter period ending September, 70% equates to our fees that we've collected. And then there's about 16% in grants. So ORCAA has a limited amount of direct federal funds, specifically with EPA. And I did confirm with, EPA, that ORCAA will be able to continue to draw down our federal funds, so we won't be impacted. I also discussed the availability of funds that we have contracted with ecology, and the majority of those funds are state funds that shouldn't be impacted. But the federal funds will likely, and ecology in the past sends out communication alerting us to the impacts of agencies such as ours. Secondly, ORCAA has sufficient cash in our fund with Thurston County Treasurer to access if there is a shutdown. ORCAA has 100% liquidity with our funds at Thurston County, thereby making those funds available to us anytime without notice. And that's important for y'all to know. ORCAA funds are not tied up with investments, thereby limiting our access. You know, the last government shutdown, what we talked was January 2018, 2019. That was for about a month. But we do have a healthy, unreserved surplus in our account that we can utilize and access in the event we have to. You know, it's getting closer, the potential shutdown, but, you know, just keep our fingers crossed, work together. Hopefully we won't face it again, but we have an alternative and a backup plan if it does happen. So, any questions?
Questions for Lynn? Thank you for that. Thank you for that detail, Lynn. That's really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
We are in a good place.
Yes, sir.
And good, a little national kumbaya would be really good. Okay, that takes us to Jeff for the executive director's report.
Okay, well, just a few things to add. As you've heard from the team here, where things are pretty busy, got a lot going on. But just add to what Robert and then Lynn just said in terms of hiring. So as Robert mentioned, we are now out for recruiting for the AQS 1 and 2 position. hoping to be out. We've been working on job descriptions for both the financial specialist position as well as the combined compliance and engineering manager position. And so expecting to be out for recruiting those two positions by early November. And there's also a lot of conversations going on here because we're filling these new positions, and both with Robert and Mark here for a few more months. And so again, trying to get as much overlap as we can so that to ease the transitions, we're stretching our space here in terms of where we're fitting people. And so we've been having conversations about how best to move things around and how best to use the space that we have. Next thing I'll just mention is in line with my performance measure number 3 around continuing to develop ORCAA's performance management process. Been spending time on that, working with our contracted HR firm, Compensation Connections, to make some updates and to further refine ORCAA's performance management process. Last week, Joe Lingenfelter from Compensation Connections joined agency managers and supervisors here for a 90-minute training on the performance and development plan process. Joe had helped me kind of tweak the forms and create some additional resources. So I'm feeling, I think the agency's in a good place and to with this going forward. So time on that. In terms of agency outreach, I mentioned last month that specifically wanted to do more outreach in developing relationships with local health officials. And along those lines, Dan and I had a great conversation last week with Katie Lindstrom, the director of Pacific County Public Health and Human Services Agency. And we talked about a variety of different ways that ORCAA can work with her agency, but also talk more broadly. And Katie's going to work to help get something scheduled. We think a meeting with staff from each of the local health agencies in ORCAA's 6 counties. So again, looking forward to those conversations because again, well, as Robert mentioned during the compliance update in terms of working closely with Thurston County, and again, these partnerships with other agencies, whether they be counties, cities, public health agencies, others, are just so important to our work as a very small agency with a very large jurisdiction. Next thing I'll mention, let's see, is you might or might not have heard, so EPA is really expanding its clean school bus rebate program. And so their application period is now open. There's quite a bit of money. I can't remember how many hundreds of millions of dollars, but eligible for public school districts, local or state governmental agencies, public charter schools. So I'll put a link in the chat. But if you work with any folks or know how to, parts of your agencies, your jurisdictions that might be interested in this, a lot of money for clean school buses is out there.
Jeff, can I ask about that?
Sure.
By clean school buses, do you mean zero emission school buses?
Means zero. Yes. For this, I mean, initially they were doing, I think it was low emission, but I think this new program, it's all zero emission school buses.
And do you know if that covers the infrastructure that's required as well, or is it just the buses themselves? I mean,
no, I believe that it does include the charging infrastructure as well.
Wow. Exciting. Thank you.
So Jeff, are those electric?
Yes, those are electric school buses.
Okay.
Or one would assume it could be a hydrogen fuel cell or the hybrid hydrogen electrics as well.
Yes, probably so. Although I'm not sure. I mean, yes. So that I put a link in the chat. There's actually some very useful documents there. But yeah, if there are, I'm familiar with electric school buses. I haven't seen hydrogen fuel cell buses, but presumably they do exist, and so presumably those would also be eligible. So, and I guess the last thing I'll mention is that it was occurring to me in a conversation I was having a couple of weeks ago that I haven't had a lot of interaction with most ORCAA board members outside of these meetings. And most of you I haven't met with since an initial meeting, within the months after I started, or maybe after you joined the ORCAA board. So I'll be reaching out in the coming weeks or maybe a month just to schedule a meeting, either virtually or in person. Just would be interested in hearing from you, talking a little bit more about sort of any questions that you have about ORCAA, suggestions, thoughts on priorities, what you're hearing from your colleagues or constituents. I just think that having, I'm just interested in having a sort of conversation outside of these board meetings, which obviously our opportunity for conversation is limited. So look to hear from me before too long. And I think that's it, unless there are any questions from anybody.
Questions for Jeff? Greg, you'll let us know if you guys get a Mr. Fusion school bus, okay?
Will do.
All right. Okay, then that takes us to good of the order. Anything for the good of the order? Okay, just a reminder that we will not meet in November. And if you anticipate any board transitions, even if they're possible, please let Jeff know so that we can make sure we educate new board members prior to considering that budget amendment in January. It's really important that we have a full board, if possible, at the January meeting. So with that, we have no executive sessions that I see or know about. And so meeting is adjourned. So we'll see you all at our December meeting. Have a good Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
See you in December.